and this is in the first Paw Patrol movie, and they were using a hair metal song as a reference. They just have it in as a temp. And they're like, no, none of this is working, Rob. None of this is working. We're running out of time. We can't just keep doing infinite revisions. We're not finding a hair metal song we like. Could you write one? So I'm in the movie singing this hair metal song. And, I'd trained my whole life to get to the point where I could write a hair metal song in a day and sing it and play all the parts. And you know what I mean?
That is amazing. Like, yeah. When else would anybody in 2020, whatever year it was, ask anybody, never mind you, to write a hair metal song? It's never going to happen.
I come from hair metal, dude. I was born, I grew up in the 80s. I could write you hair metal songs all day long.
All right, welcome to the Growth Mixtape Podcast, and I'm your host, Bob Mathers. Today I talked to Rob Szabo, Juno Award-winning producer and songwriter whose most recent acclaim came from composing tracks for the animated Paw Patrol movies, the last of which was the #1 movie in the world on its release weekend. I wonder if you've ever felt like musicians and painters and other creative people seem to be from another planet. They speak a language and have access to skills I've just never recognized in myself. And that's how I felt my whole life until a couple of years ago when I started embarking on a mission to rediscover the creativity that's been buried under a lifetime of insecurity and self-doubt. We all have it. It's not a gift available to a chosen few. We're born with it. And getting it back just might be the key to unlocking the answers to the questions keeping you up at night. If you've ever wondered if you had a creative spark, you do. It just takes practice, like eating right and exercising. This is a masterclass on getting started, punctuated with stories from a creative life well lived. Oh, and stick around to the end to hear the hair metal song that Rob wrote. But be ready to be humming it for days. Please enjoy Rob Szabo.
I gotta laugh. You're thinking this is going to be the easiest one I ever do. And
I'm thinking, you know what? I love working with professionals. Like, this is just going to be the easiest, best sounding recording of all time.
Like I was saying, I mean, good video, great audio, but really old OS for the reasons we discussed that no one will find interesting. So
yeah, I'm just so... I know. Here we are. I'm so excited about this, Rob. Like, I remember you and I, it's funny, we grew up in the same town. I think we're within like an age of each other, a year of each other. But yeah, I don't think we've ever, our orbits have never crossed until a couple months ago.
Exactly. But when we were talking at the songwriting retreat, we realized we have many mutual friends. And of course, because we grew up in the same town, Kitchener's not... it's a big town, but it's still a small town feel. And, we have a lot of crossover.
Yeah, I remember as a kid, I don't remember where in the city it was, but we would drive into Kitchener and it said population 159,000. And that number stayed the same forever. I have no idea what it is now, but it does seem like in a town of 159,000 that two kids growing up in the early 70s should have run into each other by now.
We probably did, riding our dirt bikes around or whatever.
Yeah, and I remember you mentioned the songwriting retreat. Yeah, you were the first person I think that I ran into when I walked into the cottage at Peter's. For loyal listeners of this podcast, they will have heard about the songwriting retreat by now because I haven't shut up about it since I came back. But you were the first. Yeah, you were the first person I met, and you were just so welcoming. And you're right. We had some common friends. And I just remember thinking, man, I really can't wait to get to know this guy and to have him on the podcast because you just created that sense of kind of warmth and that just made me want to get to know you more. So here we are. It's funny how things work out.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you. You never know how you're perceived. That's a generous compliment.
But I can't be the first time you've heard that.
No, people find me approachable.
Yeah,
for sure. So, that's good to hear. It never feels like that to me in the moment.
Yeah,
because navigating around your apparatus, you have a lot of self-talk. I do. Most people do, and I never think, "Oh, this guy thinks I'm great." that doesn't come across my mind.
Well, I'll tell you, Rob. Some of my favorite people to talk to and to have on the podcast are musicians, and I was reflecting on that, trying to think about what is it about musicians that I find so fascinating. And one of the things, especially professional musicians like you, is that they seem to be part of a very small group that found their purpose or found their passion early on and never deviated from it. We tell our kids, find something you love to do and never work a day in your life. And honestly, I'm not 100% sure we really believe it. But musicians like you, people that have found a way to make a living doing what they love, are actual real life examples that this isn't something we just tell our kids. It actually can happen.
There are trade-offs. Yeah, there's so many different things to address with that really opens the door to discussion. I mean, the first thing that occurred to me as you were saying that is, do you not identify yourself as a musician? I mean, you said when we met, you've been playing for most of your life. Is that right? Playing
yes.
Guitar, you just hadn't written songs until recently.
Yeah, I guess what I mean by a small group of people is people that have actually made a living, because I've never made a cent off of it. And if I had to do it all over again, I would have loved to found a way to do something like what you've done, but it just never happened, or I never believed it. I don't know. So I guess when people are looking at this amazing career and all this celebrated success you've had, like, what are people not seeing? Because it seems like a fairy tale, and I'm not sure I really believe in fairy tales.
Right. Well, yeah, that's what I meant by there are trade-offs. That's exactly what I meant. I mean, I've really had to hustle. I mean, I didn't do this with any kind of master plan. I mean, to give people context, I started playing in bands in high school, like many people do. And then I met some older guys, and we started playing in pubs before I turned 19. And, I played in a Dixieland band. I played in all sorts of bands and got experience, and I sort of learned my craft and took lessons when I could. And then at a certain point, I found myself just out of high school with a band. And so for people from KW, if you have listeners, called the Groove Daddies, which at the time it was early 90s, and that was the sort of independent music revolution. Remember the Bare Naked Ladies and Lowest of the Low, and these guys were selling, hundreds of thousands of CDs, or tapes rather, out of the back of their car. And that's what we did. We sold thousands and thousands of tapes. And I found myself, along with the other guys in the band, thinking, maybe we could do this for real. It never occurred to me that you could have a career in music, because it seemed like a dream, like sort of a pipe dream. But then all of a sudden I was there in some way without really understanding what it meant to, like, sort of the business end of it. The math at the time in our early 20s is like, all right, so 300 people came to the gig and they each paid $5. And so, divided by 3, that's, we have a couple $100 left over. We can do this. Anyway, and now 30 years or so later, I've done... You have to diversify. I mean, not everyone does, but I found in my case, I've played in lots of different bands and lots of different styles. I've played in cover bands. I've written lots of my own music, done a lot of touring, both in bands and as a solo artist. And I've had lots of experience sort of in the industry with, like, big time managers and labels and doing videos and having lots of available budget when the music industry existed like that in the 90s. And I've seen it change dramatically. Like, even people who know nothing about music know how much the music economy has changed, because it's a topic of discussion, right? So then where does that leave you when you used to be able to sell thousands of dollars worth of merch, CDs, etc. And 10 years later, it's zero, right? So I don't know. There's so many different things to talk about. I don't know what you find interesting or what your listeners might find interesting. Is there something you want to dig into? Because there's there's a lot to touch on.
There's a lot there. You're right. To what do you attribute the longevity? Is it really that? Because I think a lot of us, we get hung up in, okay, where is this going to go? Where's this going to lead? And if we can't draw a straight line between our efforts today and money or prestige or some sort of outcome, we're like, oh, well, that seems like a waste of time. From what you just described, it seems like if you did that, you would have quit when you were 17.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I wanted to stop you there. And this is something we talked about at the songwriter retreat. My experience to this day is, and the only things that have ever been really successful, and I'm not talking about only that have generated income, what I mean is things that were worth doing were things that I didn't make that kind of calculus with, that I just went into. And it sounds like, you were talking about what you might tell your kids. This is something I do tell young people. Like, if you're trying to justify the means to an end, it's probably not the right thing. It really has to feel, I think, this is my experience now. So I guess it sounds like I'm giving advice, but I guess I should probably just frame it as, this is what I've discovered, that when I do it as an end in itself, and I know it doesn't matter how it turns out, it's worth doing no matter what, those are the things that matter. And then usually the details work themselves out. Now, if you want security, that's not the way to go, I guess. But I guess being an artist has never been about security. Artists throughout the ages have this idea that you can make a career out of being an artist, I think is a pretty, sort of like a mid-20th century art thing that was a little blip. But go 100 years before that, for the next, 1,000 years before that. There was never a time when artists said to themselves, okay, this is, it's a crazy thing. You're on the fringe and you have to have patrons, usually whether it's a duke or a king or whatever, and maybe you can stay alive. And I think we're getting more and more back to that, to the idea of you need patrons, and they present themselves in different ways. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I love that, Rob. I want to come back to this idea of something worth doing. How do you know it's worth doing? Is it just I think Rick Rubin might call it, the emotional charge, follow the emotional charge. Is it that simple? Or how do you're sitting there with a fork in the road trying to figure out whether to pay the bills or do this thing that feels like maybe worth doing, or we're all confronted with choices like this all the time, things that we want to do, but we tell ourselves we don't have the time, or we're not good enough, or we're not going to succeed. How do you decide what's worth pursuing?
Well, the wisdom that I've come to around that, and it took me a while to get to it, but at one point, for instance, when I bring up trade-offs, it's almost always financial trade-offs for me, because I didn't have any sort of success to the point where I could put aside money for a rainy day. I've been living, I'm not going to say month to month, but not that far off. I don't have the kinds of security that people with regular jobs take for granted. And so the reason I framed it that way is because what I found myself doing when I started to get worried about finances at any point, especially early on, is I would say to myself, well, I should do this other thing for security. Maybe I'll do something that I don't really want to do, but that is sort of adjacent to what I'm doing. And then what you find is you start to get really good at this thing you never really wanted to do. And then you get demand for it, and you find yourself doing more of it. And this seems obvious when you talk about it like this, but the whole idea, the thing that you started the whole conversation with is the idea of committing to something that you're driven to do, and you're going to go to the ends of the earth, and you might be the best, you're going to become a world-class guitar player or singer or songwriter or whatever. But then let's say you start developing yourself, let's just say for the sake of argument, playing cover songs. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've done an enormous amount, and I'm actually well known for bands in Kitchener that I played with that played cover songs. I just did a big festival downtown Kitchener where there's like 10,000 people, and they loved hearing me and a lot of people I played with for over 30 years play cover songs, and it's wonderful. But to answer your question, you see where I'm going with this, right? I haven't totally dotted the I on the point I'm trying to make, but if you get too good at doing things that aren't your passion, then you may never get to I'm not really expressing the idea perfectly.
No, you actually, you are, Rob, because you don't have to be a musician to know what that feels like. I mean, I think going back to something that you hit on just as we were starting, I don't think most of us are intentional about our careers. We had something that we loved. We decided it's time to be a grown up, and I'm going to get a job. And I got a job because I met somebody and they offered me a job, and I took it. And then it turns out, I was actually pretty good at this. And then they gave me a raise, and they gave me a team. And then another company came away and gave me another 20 grand and gave me a promotion. And you take one step at a time, chasing a little bit of money, a better, little bit of a bigger title. And
more
a lot of people,
whatever it is.
Sure. Yeah. And then I think what I find a lot of people that I talk to that are kind of my vintage now is that they're
our vintage,
our vintage, right? It's like, oh yeah, I can kind of see the end of the line, and I never really did anything that I really wanted to do. I just kind of got swept up in things that I was good at, and I don't really want it to end this way.
Absolutely. So that you're articulating my point better than I did. Yeah. Let me give you a really concrete example. So at a certain point, I found myself producing. I'd always produced my own records, and then I transitioned into a lot of my friends started asking me to produce their records. Peter Katz was one of them, and I produced some records early on for him, and my friend Steve Strongman. And then all of a sudden, we were getting awards for those records. And then, okay, now I'm a producer, and I really enjoyed that work. But I found myself recording and writing less of my own music, but I was recording more music overall than I'd ever done. And so this is all good. I'm all using the skills that I've developed to that point, and I loved the work, and I'm fine with all of that. And then it became, well, I'm a producer, but I'm also writing grants to get money so that I can do more records like this. And people started to come for me not almost as a grant writer, as a grant writer to help them access money at all the different levels that are available in Canada. And I started doing that more and more and more. And I really didn't like it. It's really accounting, essentially. And there's nothing wrong. Somebody has to do it. But that's not really what I'm great at. And so I found myself doing more and more of it. And then at a certain point, I'm like, okay, I have to be, to your point, more deliberate about the choices I'm making, and I'm not going to be the best grant writer. There are other people that are much better at it, and they should be the ones doing it, and I should be focusing on the music part, whether it's being an artist myself or producing, recordings for other people. So that's a good example of, I think, being deliberate in your career choices and not getting really good at something you probably shouldn't be doing, or certainly for myself, I can say that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm trying to draw parallels between what you've gone through, Rob, because here's something that I've kind of discovered. I I often thought of creative people, and I would include musicians in that group for sure, as kind of an alien species that I never really understood. I never considered myself creative, and I think a lot of people feel that way. And what I've recently realized, or my hypothesis, is that we were all born with this massive well of creativity inside us, and it gets kind of dulled over time as we're told to get serious and grow up. And something happened at the songwriting retreat as well, where we were out in Peter's boat, I think, on day one, right? And we're just doing journaling, and we're listening to the frogs and the turtles and the hummingbirds, and we're writing. And I've had that happen before, and I wonder if that's a way of kind of hijacking or short-circuiting all of this judgment and noise that we've built around our life to tap into that well of creativity. Because I do think, sometimes I think the answers that were to the questions that are keeping us up at night are inside us, if we can just access that creativity and listen to what it's telling us.
I couldn't agree more. You said so many important things in that last minute of speaking. Oh my goodness. Like, the first thing that really resonated with me is the idea that I think all you have to do is look at children playing. And I mean, it's so creative, but what they're learning really important skills, but you're not having to force them to do it. And they're not saying to themselves, oh, I'm not creative, I shouldn't be playing this way. So that's exactly the point you made. And that's it in a nutshell. So I guess it really speaks. The only thing I can think of is our ultra-capitalist, ultra-productivity-obsessed culture is starting to realize that this is really crushing our spirits in some ways, in a lot of ways. And so, okay, now what do we do about this? I mean, for people with children, it seems really important for them. I don't have kids, but I mean, how do you approach this with kids?
Yeah, it's a good question. My kids are 21 and 24 right now.
So they're over the hump with that. But was that something you were aware of when they were younger, when they were in, sort of I don't know if there's a critical stage. It happens over a long period. This idea that you get this childlike wonder sort of beaten out of you through the corporate, well, through school, through all the sort of regimented ways of learning. And, a lot of them have a lot going for them, but again, there's always trade-offs, right? So how do we maintain this childlike sense of wonder and play and creativity without boundaries, but still build up meaningful skills and all the other things that we want on the upside of, structure?
Yes. And this is a fairly recent, you mentioned my kind of 1 minute rant there. It's because I've been thinking a lot about this. I was thinking a little bit about it before the songwriting retreat a couple months ago. I've been thinking about it a lot since then. I've written about it. I've talked on this podcast about it, and I've talked to clients about it. And we also talked about this, this identity that we create as this career sort of unfolds unintentionally around things that we're really quite good at and we become known for. And it feels good when people tell us we're good at it, and they pay us a lot of money to be good at it. But we've left behind kind of that childlike curiosity and creativity. And the thing that I've got to believe all of the songwriters experienced when we were together was we sort of found it again. And it's just a testament to what you and Peter and the supporting cast there were able to do in such a short amount of time. Like, it's right there with just the right amount of coaching and in the right environment.
Yeah, that's why both Peter and I are so passionate about these retreats because they really are profound in just in the way that people can discover this about themselves and discover this about the process and how it's available to all of us. It's right there, like you say. And if anything, I mean, it's the classic thing of people singing in the shower or doing great thinking in the shower and like solving problems. Or I think the brain needs to be, I mean, the pressure of, okay, now sit down in front of a blank piece of paper and now I'm going to write a song. That almost never works. But if you go for a walk or you get in the shower, or to your point about we got on the boat and, there was lots going on. And so your part of your brain, your conscious brain is being occupied just enough so you're not getting in your own way. I think that's a bit of a key to nurturing these creative spurts or moments. Did it feel like that to you? Did it feel like occupying some? Driving is good for that too, I find.
Yes, I think we do our best thinking when we're not trying so hard. I can tell you
exactly
from lots of experience, there's no way that song that I wrote would have come out staring into a camera or sitting at this desk. And I think being in a novel setting and disconnecting and having the right people around was amazing. And what I've tried to do is figure out, so how do I recreate that? Like I'm not going to show up to Peter's songwriting retreat every year to write a song. I wanted to learn how to write a song so that I could do this on my own. And so I've been really dissecting what is it about that experience that I can take away so that I can do this on my own, because it's not just about songwriting. It's about accessing that creativity that's at the heart, I think, of answering a lot of questions like, what do I want to do with the last 10 years of my career? How can I best be of service? How can I take these 30 years of experiences, these Lego blocks, and put them together in creative ways to do something different with the time that I've got left? And I certainly didn't go on a songwriting retreat to find a way to answer all those things, but that is what I think I've found, if I can just get to strip it down to, how do I do this on my own? And I wonder what advice, what have you seen by going away on these retreats that is really the key to distilling it and taking some of this back to the normal world?
I'm really curious to hear what you've come up with.
Well, the most obvious thing is getting away from technology.
Right.
And all notifications. So that's a part of it. I think for me, and this might not be universal, but for me, it's about getting out in nature. I don't have to be floating out in a boat, maybe in the middle of the lake, but I do have to be close to water, surrounded by trees. I think the two of those things it feels to me like that's halfway there.
Yeah, I would definitely double down on the no notifications thing. And of course, we all have to balance our lives somehow and, keep the rest of our lives running. So I guess the trick is to figure out a way to give yourself enough time and space and sort of thinking, breathing room, because it's crazy. And we find it on these retreats, how much one or two notifications can derail your whole sense of flow. And I'm definitely, that's a big problem for me in my life. And I have to be very deliberate about how I structure things if I want to get meaningful work done. And I think being in nature can be really helpful. But for me, I shouldn't say but, for me, it's more about staking out the space and the time, whatever it takes to do that. And if nature is your thing and that helps spur things along, great. Just as long as you don't get stuck in, well, I can't do it because I can't go out in nature, right? For me, it really has to be, if you want it to add up, because what I've found is a real creative life is a practice, just like working out or eating right or getting the right kind of sleep, or it's that thinking of yourself as an artist, whatever the medium is, whether it's you solve creative problems in business or whether you're a songwriter or whether you're, you write copy, whatever it is, you're doing creative work, and you need space to do it, and it's a practice, and there has to be some rhythm and regularity, and you find obviously you build your chops as you do it. If you can only do it once a year, like you say, if I'm only going to learn how to write a song once a year and I can only do it when I take a helicopter to the top of a mountain, it's not really sustainable. But if you've got a daily practice where you're like, no, I know how to carve out X amount of space, whatever the amount of space it is for you that it takes to engage in that practice. And most people can feel like, for me, I find I really only need, like, if I can carve out a couple of hours, 2.5, 3 hours, I can get meaningful work done. And beyond that, I don't have to kill myself to get, like, if I do 2 hours of real creative work in a day, I feel like that's a win. Does that resonate for you? Does it? Because people that like the idea of getting 8 hours of, you're out in the creative bushes, chopping away at the weeds. It's unknown. You don't have a map. Because to me, creative work is work where there's no map, where there's a problem, there's a thing that needs to be done, but you don't know what it is and you don't know how to do it. That's scary, right? If you can do 2 hours of that kind of work in a day, that's huge.
Yeah. Yes. I really love that. And you also mentioned something, Rob, this idea of not really knowing how it's going to happen. When you build that practice, maybe it's a practice of faith. Like, I'm going to sit down for 2 hours.
I love that.
I have no fucking idea whether I'm going to come out the other side with anything useful or what's going to happen between minute 1 and minute 120, but I'm going to put in the reps, and at some point something is going to show up. I don't know.
Yeah, and you just lit my brain on fire with something you said there, and that is, you don't know whether you're going to get anything out of it. And so that touches on two things. One, the faith idea, and that's not faith in any external being or anything. It's the faith that it's worth doing, and that if you do engage in the practice at some point, there will be some fruit that presents itself, whether you just get better at it, whether you will accumulate work. It's drip by drip, brick by brick. That's how it gets done. And the second part of it that lights my brain on fire, and this is something that I've discussed with so many creative people throughout the years, the idea of waste in creating art. And that sort of is a callback to something we talked about at the beginning, which is the society where there's so much emphasis on productivity and having to be able to show a result for work you've put in immediately, that will really short circuit your efforts. Because the way I've found, it really lurches. Like, I might, in my creative practice, work for a week, 2 hours a day on a thing, and really there's nothing to show for it. Because it was just sketches, or it was just my brain playing around with an idea. I'm for those listening on audio, I'm stretching things like a big elastic. I'm playing around with a thing and looking at it from different angles and throwing it around and throwing it out and starting new somewhere else. And there's no map or intention for an outcome. And then at the end of it, you find yourself somewhere that you couldn't have predicted. Just the same as you said with the song that you ended up writing. It wasn't even about the topic that you thought you might write about when you showed up at the retreat. And yet you wrote something profound that really resonated with you. And that's been my experience. And so the thing I want to double down on is the idea of learning to get comfortable with waste in the process. That is ultra important. And the reason I'm being so emphatic about it is I really struggle with it. I really, really struggle with it because a lot of my creative life is being paid to do that kind of work for other people. It's really hard. And you probably run into this in your creative life when someone's paying you top dollar for something that they want to see results. But, if you come to them after whatever period, and, I'm still playing around in the sandbox. But if you want real creative work, you have to get comfortable with that. So that's very important.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I think that maybe is, as people look to maybe chip away and find and rediscover this childlike creativity later in life, man, that's, I think, really one of the truths that they have to combat, because for 30 years of their career, however long it's been, we're kind of taught that waste is exactly that. Like, your measure of success is how much output you can create in the hours that you put in. And if you create more good stuff than other people, then you get promoted and rewarded. This idea of spending 2 hours on something and having nothing to show for it feels like a colossal waste of time. But it's but if you don't get over that, how many people in their life, when they later on say, "Oh, I've always wanted to write a book," and maybe they try, and it's like, holy shit, like, I'm going to have to, Maya Angelou used to write for 8 hours so she could maybe get 1 page of useful material. That sounds depressing. Yeah, right.
Well, that's the mindset. I mean, there's so many examples of, famous recordings or famous records by famous artists. I mean, I often come back to that book by Rick Rubin that we discussed at the retreat a lot. And it really is a Bible of sorts for me for the creative life. He's done such a great job of putting so many important concepts, and he does talk about that. And just the idea that the public almost never gets to see the waste that got put into a creative project. But I know for sure from my own experience and from a lot of what I've read in that book and many other, I read voraciously about how records were made. And you often hear this idea that some famous records, they made, triple the amount of songs were written. No one ever got to hear those. They recorded twice as many. They recorded 50 songs. We only got to hear 20, that kind of thing. And anyway, I'm just... I'm so emphatic about the waste part. I'm trying to tell myself something mostly, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you mentioned, and again, loyal listeners of this podcast will be no stranger to the creative act, because I talk about it incessantly. The one of the things that Rick Rubin talks about, it's always struck with me, and I wanted to get your take on it. He says that once you've created something and you put it out in the world, it has what happens next has nothing to do with you. And I'm wondering how, and that's something I think that a lot of us struggle with. Take social media. Like, I'll write on LinkedIn and I'll write a really personal post and I'll put it out there and nobody cares. It just dies. And I can't pretend that doesn't bother me.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you deal with it?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you, because I tell myself, I don't care. I tell myself it'll reach the right audience. I think we're just hardwired to care, which is why social media is just so insidious, because it feeds on our primal need for validation.
100%. The lizard brain.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, I'm not part of the tribe. I'm going to starve kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Right? You can't be banished because it has real survival implications, right?
Yeah, you must have had music, albums, work that you've put out that you were really proud of and you were hoping would land somewhere and get a reaction that didn't? Like, how does that, and how has that changed over time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. How has that changed? Meaning my expectations?
Yeah. How have you managed as you've gotten older, maybe more mature, or maybe it hasn't? Maybe it's still something you struggle with as much as you did when you were playing for the Groove Daddies.
I've really gotten over a hump of sorts in terms of, how they talk about dance confidence at different ages. Have you ever heard this?
No.
And when you're in your 20s or your teens, you're you're really self-conscious and you're worried about what people think about you. But then when you get to your mid-20s, you kind of get a little bit of dance confidence on the dance floor. And then you get to your 30s, there's another little dip. You know, you got to be an adult and present a certain thing. But then when you get into your 50s, you're kind of like, I don't give a shit. And, you know, you have more dance confidence. And I kind of feel like that's where I'm at. I'm kind of like, no, I know who I am. I'm less worried than I ever have been about how I'm perceived, and I'm more committed to making art for expression regardless of how it lands. Now, that has no connection whatsoever to commerce. So you have to accept those trade-offs. So, you know, that's a big part of the discussion, but I'm more comfortable with it as it relates to art. I think I just understand the importance of doing art for me as a person, like spiritually, and just, and I say that like it's non-denominational, nothing like that. I really don't connect it to any dogma or religion. I just mean it's beyond, it really is a faith-based thing. I love you use that word, where it's like, no matter what happens with this, I express something, and it was my medicine in a way. I mean, these are cliched things that people say, but it's true in my experience. And I find that if I don't maintain my creative practice, I suffer. So whether or not anyone relates to it, it's a selfish practice in that way. And I think there has to be a certain amount of selfishness in it. And I've had to become comfortable with that as well, because, you know, other things suffer, and sometimes relationships, whatever it is. I mean, you have to dedicate yourself to it to a certain degree in order for the catharsis to happen, right? I don't know. Did you feel that when you wrote your song? Was there like a release, or I know it's a very personal thing, but
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I remember sitting down on the dock kind of when the idea for the song happened. And then it happened actually really quickly. Mm-hmm. Like it happened really slowly, and then something just kind of snapped and it kind of poured out within a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Yes. And when you were talking about that, Rob, it hit on something else, kind of goes back to kind of Rick Rubin. I think I asked Peter about this when he was on the podcast last year. This idea of creating for yourself because there's something inside you that needs to come out, and you want to, you know, offer it to the world no matter what that reaction is. And that's a kind of a romantic notion of creativity. I kind of like that. But you mentioned commerce. Like when somebody is paying you for something, you do have to care what they think.
Absolutely. So I'm very clear about that when I'm mixing something for someone, when I'm producing something. It's got to be a collaboration. And at the end of the day, they have to be happy with it, and they have to be able to get behind it. Now, having said that, a lot of the discussions I will frame in this way. I'll say, well, when we first got together, you told me these were your goals and this is what you were trying to accomplish, and this is how you wanted to present yourself. And a lot of it has to do with genre and style and how you want to. There's so many cultural touchstones that are involved in music. And, you know, if you do this with the reverb and you do this with the drums, it means country. And if you do this with the guitars and you make them distorted, and then it means hard rock. And so I really have to remind people constantly that, oh, okay, if you want that, what you're communicating to people is this. Are you comfortable with that? And is that what you're trying to communicate? And if not, should we do something differently? And so hopefully in the end, it's a discussion like that. And we go through many different revisions. And at the end, people are happy. And that's good. Everyone's happy. Now, as far as going to the ends of the earth with self-expression, that's my own stuff.
Yeah.
And hopefully I can facilitate other people doing that. But at the end of the day, they're the judge of whether that happened or not. I'm not.
One thing I wanted to ask you, I don't think I asked Peter this. sometimes when I'm listening to lyrics and there's a lyric that is just, I just like, oh my God, that's so good. This is my own personal example, but there's a song by Pearl Jam and there's a lyric that says, I wish I was a full moon shining off your Camaro's hood. Now we could
juxtaposition.
Yeah, we could sit here and talk
natural and industrial, whatever.
And we could both rhyme off like incredibly just beautiful lines that we've heard. Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering, I often imagine with Eddie Vedder is sitting there with his notepad and he writes down that line. Does he ever set down his pen and go, holy shit, I'm never writing anything that good again? Like that's what I was put on the earth to do. And I'm wondering whether that's ever happened to you, whether you've written a line that just seemed to land and you were so proud of, like, holy shit, I think that's as good as anything I'm ever going to do.
I don't really have those. The reason I'm laughing is when usually the judge, for me, the internal judge, is if something's good is usually if I laugh. If I think it's funny, it usually means it's good. It usually means it's something that it's like, when you have either that nervous laugh of like, oh, can I say that? Is that pushing? It's like right on the edge. It's like, oh shit, am I going to say that? I love that kind of feeling. And that's usually when I know, like, I feel like, oh, like I'm kind of proud of that. That's cool. I think I am going to say that.
Yeah. Yeah, I often wonder if that moment happens. There must be music. Maybe it's not a line, but something you've created that struck you in the moment that you were just so like incredibly proud of that you thought, like, that's it. What do you think?
I don't know. What I'm hearing you say is some kind of like satisfaction, or I don't often sit back and go, oh yeah, man, that's great. That I don't have that problem.
Me neither.
I have the opposite problem, but I do have, like, if I'm really hot on something, it means I'm excited about it, and it means I'll probably finish it. That's more important than anything, because honestly, Bob, I've got hundreds of unfinished songs, and I don't feel bad about that. I just feel like those are the ones that I didn't have enough momentum to get me through to finish. So if I finish a song, it means there was some moment of, oh, this is pretty good. That's good enough to like get me over the finish line, because you have to sustain your attention, right? That's the biggest thing, is that I actually could hold my attention enough, and usually through sustained sessions, like, meaning, the feeling of, or I'm not sure whether you do in terms of songwriting, but for me, the initial burst of, you talked about that burst of creativity, and you felt like, oh, like something sort of unlock or something shift. And then you're like, for me, I usually lose track of time, and you get that kind of hyper-focused flow feeling, and then you're in it, and you're not paying attention to, is this good or not? You're just in it, and then you transition out of that without realizing, and then you're kind of to like, oh, I have to go to the washroom, or, it's 4 a.m, or whatever it is, and then you can come back the next day and go, oh, I think I've got a song there, or, oh, that's terrible. But usually if you still have motivation to like, oh no, I know what this is. I'm going to cross the T here, dot the I. Oh, I'll put this here. Okay. I think that's it.
Yeah. This idea of that's a couple of things about that, Rob. One is, does the idea have enough emotional energy and momentum to get you through to completing it?
That's precisely, yeah.
Right? Or does it run out so it goes into the pile of hundreds of, unfinished songs?
Mm-hmm. And then maybe it was just a sketch, or
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it was a kernel that'll show up in some other song,
Exactly. Often subconsciously.
Yeah.
Without meaning to. Yeah. And sorry, I cut you off. You're going to add something else to that.
No. I was just thinking of this idea of finishing your shitty first draft, which is something I think Anne Lamott talks about in Bird by Bird. But I've also, I think I heard John Lennon talk about it. Like, if you have a song, just complete it. 3 verses, a couple choruses, get it, just take that momentum and get through it. And then you've got a shitty first draft, and then you've got a song you can work with instead of
There's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if people are blocked, or if they find they're really up against resistance, lowering the stakes so that, to your point about write a shitty song, just tell yourself, I'm writing a shitty song.
Yeah.
And, that may or may not work. But I've found, those are the kinds of things I often try as, little games you play with yourself, with artists I'm working with if I'm producing for them. And I'll say, lower the stakes. This doesn't have to be your final artistic statement. This is just a song we're writing today. We don't have to use it. You know what I mean? And often people will write their best stuff when they're just fooling around, right? Oh, well, this is a goofy song, or this is like you said, it's a shitty song. Let's write a shitty song today.
Yeah, it kind of comes back to that idea of play. I was just listening to a podcast where they were talking about Clint Eastwood, and he would sometimes go over to the cinematographer and say, hey, I want you to record that. And then all the actors think they're just rehearsing, they're fucking around, and he would sometimes capture something that got lost when they were finally ready to kind of do the
that's almost
production.
Always, that's the trick that musicians and producers almost all, the whole idea of the first take energy.
Yeah.
And the idea of you're not thinking, and how do you get yourself there? When you're performing is certainly one part of it, but we're talking now about creating in the first place when you're writing. And there's a lot of mental games. It's all about how do you make it a practice? What do I need to do to get myself there? It's different for everybody.
It is different for everybody, but I was wondering, so you've hit on a couple of things, and I'm just wondering, for me and for anybody listening that's looking to kind of re-spark this creative practice, so, disconnecting from technology, setting aside a couple of hours, what are some of those other mental games? You mentioned not taking it so seriously, just let's play around, write a shitty song. What are some of those other mind tricks you think that help people get around that resistance you talked about?
Making it regular, I find, really helps. I think the thing that's more important than anything is finding out what works for you. And usually that means developing, almost without exception, it means developing some sort of practice. And in that practice, you'll find out, oh, okay, I don't need 2 hours. I peter out after an hour and a half and I have to make a sandwich. So maybe it's better for me to do, an hour and a half in the morning and an hour and a half in the evening. And when's best for me? Should I do all my work first and then do the thing? Or no, is this like some people's workout hack where they have to do it first thing when they get out of bed, or they never get around to it? And those kinds of things, when you make it a practice, you start to find out when you'll actually do it. And that might be more important than anything, than any one, hack or trick that you use. And then for some of us, you need to mix it up all the time. The classic, people talk about ADHD and ADHD, and that we are all on the spectrum somewhere, and that's something that gets a lot of airtime in ADHD and ADHD discussion groups, is the idea that human beings need variety, and getting stuck in too much of a routine can actually, stunt progress. So then you got to play that game with yourself where you got to mix it up. But it's a practice. So telling yourself that, this is a practice, and I'm going to, just like any relationship that you're building, or romantic relationship, you want to do this or that to spice it up. And we're going to, it takes work, and it takes effort, and it takes commitment, whether you think of it like nurturing a garden, or, you have to water it. You have all kinds of analogies that you could bring to it.
Yeah, man, I think that's one of the key things I've taken away from this conversation. I guess I never thought of it as a practice. I've got my morning pages that I try to do every morning, and the thing that's interesting about that is that I know 100% of the time I will feel better. I will have a better day when I do this.
See, I love this. I love that you have that practice.
Yeah, but
I've done that at different seasons of my life.
Well, yeah, but every single morning I negotiate with myself. Do I really need to do it today? Even though 100% of the time, Rob, like it's never not helped me. And I still can't. It's like running or working out or all these other things that are good for me that I don't want to do. I'm in a constant state of negotiation with myself. So it is a practice.
Is it easier for you? Is it easier for you to do it with running or working out or?
Yes, but I've been doing
all
those
the
things.
Same thing.
I think it's easier, but I've just been doing them longer. And I've just learned that, hey, I run every other day. I get up. I've stopped thinking about whether I want to do it. I know the answer. I don't want to do it. But I know that.
Do you have a hack? Like, for me, if I have to work out, if I put on my gym clothes, I will work out.
Yes.
I won't take them off.
Yeah, you're right.
You know what
because
I mean?
The idea of, okay, because I'm old, I have to stretch for half an hour. Then I have to put on my running shoes. Then I have to get dressed. And if I thought about all those little things, but you're right. No, I just do them automatically. And by the time I've gotten through all those, well, it's just, I might as well go for a run now. I've done all the prep work. So I think I need to apply that to my creative practice as well.
Yeah, and give yourself space. Oh, this is what I need to do for myself. Give yourself space to realize that it's not as well developed as your health practice, and that it will develop over time.
I can't. It's funny, as I was sort of agonizing, Rob, over all the things that I wanted to talk to you about. There are 5 or 6 things that we never got around to because what I did was I just wanted to move that creative practice stuff to the top. And I thought, if that's all we talk about, I am elated because I've been so dying to talk to Rob about all this other stuff. And that's kind of what happened. I could have pulled ourselves out of that and said, no, I want to talk about the Junos and Paw Patrol and all these other different really interesting things about your life. But
do you want to just address some of those quickly so that we've done it? I'll try and limit my oration on each of them.
The thing about the Junos, for those people that are listening outside of Canada, kind of the Canadian Grammys, I guess I was wondering what your relationship is with those. I mean, I'm sure you get introduced all the time. 4-time Juno nominee, and you won a Juno. And I guess I'm wondering what your relationship is with that, because it's great to get recognized, but then at some point the recognition stops, the applause stops, and we all, no matter what we do for a living, we all contend with a season in our life like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what you just touched on is incredibly important for anyone working and being recognized by their peers. And just the idea that if you identify too strongly with that recognition, it's not going to be healthy. And I think I've always known that to be true, meaning it's not sports. It's not the 100-meter dash and there's a clear winner. It's a different thing. It's apples and oranges. And we all know that just because you're the person that won the Juno that year doesn't mean the work you did was better than the other work that was up for grabs that year. It just means that there were, and this is where it gets into politics, there were people in the process, in the jury, in the industry, in whatever, that, it was your year. That's really what it is. And if you get comfortable with that, on the one hand, hopefully you can be grateful to be recognized by your peers, to be there, period. And that's definitely the feeling I try and put at the front of it. But I also really need to remind myself that it really doesn't matter. And I know what the work I'm most proud of is, whether or not it gets recognized. And I think that goes back to the faith thing you were talking about at the beginning. So sometimes it's frustrating for me because this is the conundrum I find myself in. Because I get hired to do work where the only measure of do I know what I'm doing or not is that I've won that kind of award. because really no one can tell one way or the other. If you want to call yourself a producer, you're a producer. But if you're a producer that's been nominated for 4 Junos and won one of those 4, then something must have happened. So, on my social media, you'll see that it says 4-time, on my LinkedIn, I advertise a Juno thing, fully knowing that I don't really care, and I know that it doesn't mean what people think it might mean. And I would hate for people to think that I identify with it that strongly. Having said that, if someone's hiring me, it eases their mind in some way.
I'm so glad we made time for that because, this idea of comparison, I think, I love the idea of it becoming less relevant as we become more mature and more confident, comfortable in our skin. Mm-hmm. But man, it's still something that I struggle with, and always kind of comparing myself to people around me and the clients that they're serving and the stages that they're speaking on, and are they having as many? Do they have as many followers as me? Okay, one last thing. So Paw Patrol. You mentioned this. So my kids are Paw Patrol is a kids show. Now my kids. They're too old for Paw Patrol. So it's probably one of those things, because I've mentioned it to people. Oh, did you know Rob Szabo did the music for Paw Patrol? And, of course, people my age don't know what I'm talking about, but people 10 years younger than me were like, oh, my God, my kids grew up on Paw Patrol.
Yeah, with kids between, for the last many years, from about 3 to 7.
Massive.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was either because we don't have kids. But when I started working on it, I became really familiar. It's enormous, and it's Canadian. It's a Canadian company, Spin Master, right? But it's an international, huge juggernaut of a franchise, right? So just to be clear, so people know, I don't work on the TV series. I work on the movies. Mm-hmm. So I've worked on 3 movies so far. The 3rd is just coming out this month, actually, internationally. The last one was the 2nd in the series of movies, and it was the #1 movie in the world on release weekend. #1 above anything. Isn't that incredible? And I can say that, I can flaunt that because I play such a small role in it. It's a team of hundreds of people. It's hundreds and hundreds of animators and storyboard writers and, the director, editor, all down the line, people's roles that I don't know. The amount of human energy that goes into making a blockbuster level animated film is incredible.
And how does that opportunity land in your lap?
The director is one of my best friends, and we've done music throughout our lives. I helped him with music when we were both very young. I've known him since the early 2000s, and we're tight buds. And at one point, he's like, hey, would you consider doing this? That's how everyone comes to me for work that I would love to do. Well, I'm like, would you probably don't want to do this, but I'm like, are you kidding me? Of course I want to do this. So I work on, this is one part of it people don't understand. Score is all the orchestral stuff in a movie like that. I don't have anything to do with score. But when there's a pop song in the movie, like when they're on this upcoming movie, you'll see all the promo it's a Backstreet Boys song. So when there's, that moment in the movie where the song of the summer, so I'm the one who edits that in all the iterations that happen. And there's usually 5 or 6 of those songs in a movie. And someone has to, they don't happen the same way you'd hear them on Spotify. They have to duck out when there's dialogue. There's all this editing that has to happen.
Yeah, it's just funny how you think about, you can kind of make your head spin. If you think about all of the things that had to happen just so in order for that opportunity to kind of land in your lap, have that relationship with the director and just all of the things you had to say yes to, maybe some of the things that you said no to, all led to that opportunity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I had to do all of it. It's funny. It's like I'd been training for it for my whole life to that point, for real. Because you actually, in order to do that kind of editing, you really have to understand pop production, right? And at that point, I'd done probably 50 albums as a producer. And so I really got my reps in, and I was very comfortable with the work they were asking me to do, even though I'd never worked on a movie like that. And further to that, even though this is not usually the music editor's job, they asked me to write some stuff just because, again, to your point about, what did you have to do to get in a position? Like, I'd been on the other side of the glass or the fence so many times as an artist. Like, what do I have to do to get my music in movies? What do I have to do to become a composer? And at that point, I was on the production side in the movie talking to the editor and the director, and they're going, oh, they had this, they use references for songs. And this is in the first Paw Patrol movie. And they were using a hair metal song as a reference. They just have it in as a temp. And then we go through dozens of different songs to choose the song that'll end up in the movie. And they didn't like any of them. And they're like, no, none of this is working, Rob. None of this is working. We're running out of time. We can't just keep doing infinite revisions. We're not finding a hair metal song we like. Could you write one? So I'm in the movie singing this hair metal song, and, I trained my whole life to get to the point where I could write a hair metal song in a day and sing it and play all the parts. And you know what I mean?
That is amazing. Like, yeah. When else would anybody in 2020, whatever year it was, ask anybody, never mind you, to write a hair metal song? It's never going to happen.
I come from hair metal, dude. I was born, I grew up in the 80s. I could write you hair metal songs all day long.
I know, but how many other hair metal songs have you written other than that one?
Yeah, not
recently.
Not a ton.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton of hair metal, but I mean, I knew what to do when the time came, when the call went out. So, yeah, I thought that was a great example of having something in your tool belt that when you're called upon, and then that's something that, I'm a composer on, and kids watch that movie a lot. And so I'm incredibly grateful for that.
Is that hair metal song on Spotify, or how do I get my ears on that?
You'd have to watch it. It's on my website. I can send you a link if you want.
I'll put it in the show notes.
It's a little clip. Yeah. It's funny because it's like I'm the voice of the bad guy, and I actually sing, and it's my voice. So I've talked to young like kids who are like 3 or 4 years old, and you see them doing the mental math of, like, when I try to explain to them, hey, that's me in the TV, I'm singing that, and they kind of, you see them trying to do the math. They look at me, they look at the TV, they look back, and they're like, nah, I don't think so, dude.
Man, that is awesome. God, I can't. This is a conversation, Rob, that's going to sit with me. We've just touched on so many things, so many rabbit holes we went down. I just can't thank you enough for this, man. This is just exactly what I was hoping for.
I'm so grateful. Thanks so much for having me on, Bob. As you can tell, I mean, I can go on and on about this kind of stuff. I think about it all day long. Just, how to do this, how to repeat, how to keep the practice going. And a lot of the reason I'm so emphatic about a lot of it is that I'm talking to myself.
Yeah. Yeah, those are my favorite conversations. The ones that's really what this podcast is about, is like, okay, I really want to try to understand this creativity thing better. Who can I talk to? And if I'm going to have a conversation, I might as well let other people in on it in case it's something they struggle with too.
Yeah. And thank you so much for having me. I love having these kind of dig deep conversations. That when I had my podcast, that was, that's why I did it.
This has been so awesome. For anybody that wants to learn a little bit more, where can they find you?
robszabo.com. And I'll have to spell that because it's not an intuitive name to spell. It's S as in Sam, Z, A, B as in Bob, O.com.
Yeah, and so I caught some of your set when you were here last week or a couple of weeks ago, like you said, man, just so much energy, so much fun to watch, songs that everybody is just like, everybody's got some memory in the back of their head that makes them want to get up and dance like they're 17 again, man. It's just so much fun.
I'm so glad you were able to see that. That was a cool thing that the city of Kitchener put together. It's so great to see the community come out like that, and to have a free concert in the City Hall Square like that. It's great to be part of.
Well, thanks again, man. This has been so good.
Thanks again, Bob. Really great to see you again and to dig into stuff we care about.
The Growth Mixtape podcast with Bob Mathers is produced by Bespoke Projects. Music by Jean-Michel Walter Cronkite. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to follow and rate us. When you do this, it helps to raise our podcast profile so that more people can find us. If you want to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn using the link in the show notes.